Good evening. My name is Sandra Voltero, and this is Be Prepared. Tonight we're talking about a very important subject matter, particularly for our elders. It's called elder abuse, and we're all familiar with that. This is a hard time of year, December and January, for most of us, and particularly, I think, for the elders, for what they have to deal with. So let's talk about it. We want to know what is elder abuse and what does it look like. So tonight I want to welcome our guests. First of all, I have DA Marion Ryan next to me. She was elected into office in 2014 as the Middlesex County District Attorney and represents the Commonwealth's largest county with 54 towns and cities and 26 colleges in urban, suburban, and rural areas, comprising over 1/4 of the population of Massachusetts. It's quite a district. District Attorney Ryan is a career prosecutor with significant courtroom experience, having prosecuted many of Middlesex County's most complex and challenging cases. She is recognized expert on developing and creating innovative solutions that are defined by not simply getting involved after a criminal act has occurred, but instead taking meaningful steps to stop crime before it happens. And Attorney Ryan has been a leader in domestic violence prevention and prosecution for over 3 decades and has conducted trainings across the county for prosecutors, law enforcement officers, and service providers on recognizing the signs of domestic abuse. She regularly lectures and leads workshops on workplace safety and the dangers of prescription drug abuse, teen dating violence, anti-bullying, and distracting driving, and has been acknowledged for her leadership on opiate crisis and on developing initiative aimed at keeping children safe and protecting our seniors. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And next to her is Marge McDonald, who is the director of the Council on Aging. And Ms. McDonald has been the director at the Burlington Council of Aging since 2001. She served on the committee that worked on creating 211 information phone system and was a certified information referral specialist. She is a past co-chair and founding member of the Metro North Alzheimer's Partnership. Ms. McDonald also served on C.O.A.'s Dementia Projects Advisory Group and a yet unnamed committee to work on saving the shine. That's an important thing. Serving health information needs of everyone. Counseling programs that is in danger of being defunded by the federal government as of March in 2018. Ms. McDonald was the lead in forming a hoarding group for the town of Burlington and served on Mass DPH's Alcohol and Substance Abuse Task Force for Seniors. Ms. McDonald works at the local and state level advocating for seniors and their needs, working toward a world where all seniors are able to live the life they want and deserve to live. Welcome, Marge.
Thank you.
And next to her is Officer Lynn Reynolds. Lynn is a Senior Liaison Officer for Elder Abuse here in Burlington. She's also a RAD instructor. She also is a mountain bike officer. And she spent 4 years as active duty in the Air Force in Belgium, Virginia, and Saudi Arabia. She also had 4 years in the Air Force Reserves. Welcome, Lynn.
Thanks.
And next to her is James Tigges, who has been a police officer for the town of Burlington for over 30 years and is currently one of Burlington's criminal detectives. In addition to investigating burglaries and other property crime, Jim is also a sexual assault investigator and has investigated numerous types of financial crimes. Jim is also a member of the Leahy Hospital Domestic Violence Initiative Committee and is involved heavily with the community policy efforts of the police department. And this year, he was also elected in as our selectman in Burlington.
Thank you, Sandra.
Welcome. Okay, let's get started. So let's talk about what is abuse. Marge, you want to start off that?
Abuse is such a kind of a broad question. There are 4 kinds of abuse. There's financial, there's physical, there's emotional, and there's verbal. Did I say verbal already? Mm-hmm. They obviously present very differently, and they require different types of responses. Financial abuse would be when a caregiver of some sort, usually a family member, takes advantage of an elder and somehow is getting their money, is writing checks for themselves, or signs that, somehow gets the senior to sign the house over to them, or any number of things that involve finances.
Right.
Verbal is obviously just, somebody just being nasty and yelling at somebody, or just saying very mean things. And the physical obviously is, somebody hitting somebody, pushing them, anything like that. The one that I did miss was neglect. So you have self-neglect as well. So somebody can neglect themselves. They don't take care of themselves properly for whatever reason. Sometimes it could be a couple. They're kind of neglecting themselves. They can't take care of themselves. So it all looks a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, you have anything to add to that?
No, Marge covered it pretty well. Again, abuse can be a subjective term sometimes, and it does take all different shapes. You mentioned that Marge is on a hoarding committee or a panel. That is a form of self-neglect, which would fall under the umbrella of abuse. And we do see that from time to time here in Burlington, and it can be a very dangerous situation as well. But as far as the types of abuse, Marge did a great job in summarizing.
What are some of the common signs of elder abuse that may go unnoticed? D.A. Ryan.
Well, I think some things, and depending on what kind of abuse it is, you may see people who don't have enough food in the house. The house has, as Detective Tigges mentioned, it's just become filled with things, so it's really unsafe for people to be living in there, or emergency personnel if they needed to go there. You may see bruising on people. Broken eyeglasses are often a sign. Someone who is just not very well kept, is dirty. Their clothing is dirty, ragged. It's not appropriate for the season. They're wandering around in the winter with a sweater on rather than an appropriate coat or jacket, that kind of thing. People who are being financially exploited and can't afford to keep up the rent on their apartment, or maybe to pay for their car, those kinds of things, which should be covered by their income. But because people are taking their money, they can't do that.
Absolutely. So why is it important for first responders to be educated around recognizing anything that's suspicious with elders?
Because unfortunately, one of the things that often happens when somebody is being abused is the person who's abusing them tends to isolate them from everybody else. So they stop seeing their friends, they stop seeing other family members, they stop going out to the senior center or to places that they used to go. So the only people who may actually get to have eyes on people and recognize that are the first responders, because what frequent scenario, if you will, and one of the things that we've partnered with some of our first responders and ambulance companies about is many people, even though they may be being exploited and separated by someone, they do fall in their home, for instance, and they have to call for a response to help them get up. So we've done a lot of training with first responders, with ambulance companies, that when they go in that house, they may be the only pair of eyes for weeks or months on that person, that they take a look around. Is it unsafe to be in that house? Is the refrigerator empty? Is the person, wearing ragged clothing? Are they dirty? Those kinds of things, because that's a way that they can see that, make a report to the appropriate authorities, and help us to get services to the house.
Right. And if they see something like that, Jim, what do you do? I mean,
Well, if it's a first responder, they're what's called a mandated reporter, just like medical professionals, police, fire, EMTs, they're all what's called mandated reporters. So they have to file a report with Elder Services upon seeing something like that. First it's filed verbally, then it's filed by follow-up of a written report. So that's how a first responder would report that. But to add on to what D.A. Ryan said, neighbors are very important. If they see, if there's an elder or any person that normally comes outside, does their chores, does some gardening, and then all of a sudden they're not. What's going on? What changed for them? Why is that person not out like they always were? And other things that just to add to look for as well is changes in potential victims' mood. Are they more fearful? Are they very anxious where they weren't before? Were they very, baseline person? Now all of a sudden they're very, afraid of everything.
right.
So that change in fear is a sign to watch for. And then also, if you suspect someone's abusing them, whether it be a relative or a caretaker, some of them tend to become hyper-vigilant or hyper-vigilant about their actions as well. So they may change their mood and their actions and how they are because they're afraid of getting caught. So just changes in mood, changes in their daily activity, stuff like that.
So, Lynn, what are some of the scams that they target elders for here?
There's the grandparent scam. They'll call and say that I'm locked up in Mexico. You need to go and get some gift cards to bail me out of prison in Mexico. They get the IRS scam. You got the gypsies that come around saying the paving or the trees cutting down. There's a lot.
And the elders seem to go along with that, or do they question it?
More times they don't question it and they go along with it because they believe the person that's calling them or speaking with them. It's too bad that they don't check with their families before they give money away.
So what in particular items are we seeing here in Burlington, Jim?
We're seeing the IRS scams. We're seeing the grandparent scams. The bad guys are becoming very creative. They're using multiple phones now, multiple people. And just so people are aware too, there's a thing called spoofing, where they may get a phone call that says Burlington Police or IRS or something. That's a fake phone call, fake phone number. What they're doing is they're called spoofing the number. So they may say they were from the IRS, and it may say IRS on the caller ID, but that number's been spoofed. It's a pay service where they're allowed to change the phone number that's displayed when they make phone calls.
I see. So what should someone do, like a neighbor or a friend, if they suspect there's some kind of abuse going on with somebody that they know? Who wants to answer that?
What they should do is they should call the Protective Service hotline. But what they can do, if they're not comfortable calling that hotline and kind of turning their friend in, is they can always come to their local council on aging and ask for assistance. And one of our social workers will call and try to make contact, go out and see the elder and see if they can kind of assess what's going on for themselves.
Two things that are really important about that and often prevent people from calling is, number one, they think, what if I call and I'm wrong? And it isn't what I think it is. First of all, what we always say to people is, if you have gotten to a certain age and you size up a situation and you think there's something wrong, there probably is.
Yeah.
But if you are wrong and you've acted in good faith, you are trying to help your neighbor, your family member, and you've made that call and it turns out there's an innocent explanation for what happened, people are protected from liability on that. People wonder, can something happen to me? You're protected from liability in the statute if you acted in good faith. And the second piece is that people often are worried, even someone who may be being neglected or abused themselves, who's afraid to call and often the abusers use this to their advantage. They have told the person what none of us wants to hear. If you should report me or I got in trouble, you would have to go to a nursing home or you couldn't stay in the house. And so people do a balance. This isn't very nice, it's not good the way he treats me, but at least I can stay in my own home. And what it's important for people to know is that Massachusetts is a state where there's a lot of protection, that if, for instance, the abuser is the person providing care and say they were removed from the home because they were found to be abusive, Massachusetts requires that there be every reasonable attempt to provide services to keep somebody in their own home. So your choice is not between I can't stay in my own home or I have to stay here and be abused. There are lots of other things like Meals on Wheels and services, visiting nurses services, all of those things that have to be attempted or try to put that together before anybody could ever be taken out of their own home.
I think it's also important to note that Protective Services doesn't go in and arrest people.
Right.
A lot of times they're afraid, my son will go to jail if I report him or ask for help. But that's not what they do. They try to help with the situation, and they'll do the least amount of interfering in the situation as they can while keeping the elder safe.
Are people worried? I mean, sometimes the person is being abused. Aren't they worried that if the abuser hears that someone reported them, that they'll take it out on the elder person?
Yes, because often that part of how they've been controlling them is with threats, things like, you know, if I get in trouble, you'll pay for it, you'll be out of the house, whatever it is. And, you know, even when, and as Marge said, even when the police get involved, even when somebody is arrested, even if we're prosecuting somebody, there's a lot of possible options besides jail. You know, we want to intervene and change the circumstances. Sometimes people have a substance issue, they have a mental health issue, they have a drinking problem. That's what the person wants addressed. And we will talk to them, we will work with them and try to figure out a disposition that gets to the right place. It's not jail or nothing. There are a lot of options in between.
So how do we let them know? How does the community let the elders know all this information? I mean, like here is a great way of letting them know. But are there other ways? I mean, how can the community help more?
We do run, we run articles in our newsletter, which goes to every single senior in town, and many, excuse me, many of them do read it. And then we've done programs over time. You know, you can't do everything all at once, but we've done programs talking about elder abuse and what it is, and we filmed it, and it's gone on BCAT in the past. We should probably bring one up out of the archives and show it again. Lots of different ways to, you know, to get that information out. A lot of the banks will come out and talk about financial exploitation and scams.
Now, if someone comes into the senior center and they look to you like they've been abused, what steps do you take from there?
So we're what's called, as Jim said, a mandated reporter. So we are legally obligated to make a report, which we do. But we'll also talk to them and see if we can kind of figure out what's going on. You know, did they fall? Did they maybe just have a little bit too much to drink? Did they have a procedure? I had somebody come into the center a couple weeks ago, had 2 black eyes. And it turns out she had a procedure that had caused that to happen. So we would never kind of willy-nilly just say, oh, it's, you know, it's protective. And you learn the signs over time. You learn what the marks look like when somebody's been hit or squeezed. You know, I had somebody who said she fell into the car, and she clearly had not fallen into the car. So you just you learn those signs, and you talk to the person and kind of figure out what has gone on that might have caused whatever you're seeing.
Yeah, better not to jump to conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's just self-neglect too. You know, they're not taking care of themselves.
And what do you do in that case?
We actually call Minuteman, and we help to get them services. You know, get a homemaker in, help them with bathing if they're falling a lot, Meals on Wheels if they're unable to prepare a meal or they just can't afford to buy the food. You know, it depends on the circumstances. Grocery shopping.
What kind of, like if someone comes to you and say they think that their grandmother's being abused, what steps do you tell them to take in that situation?
We will give them the number for the hotline, but we'll also ask if they want us to go talk to that grandmother. You know, that protective service hotline can be a little scary and a little too official. Sometimes letting the Council on Aging go out and talk to them, and then we'll make the report and work with protective services on a case.
Good.
We work actually very closely with protective services.
Yeah, because I think they'd be afraid for someone to go out there and talk to them because now they're not going to tell you the truth,
Right.
of course, right? And you just hope there's something you can see that makes it evident that something's
And we're less
wrong.
scary than protective. I mean, not the people. I mean, protective service workers are not scary. They're all they're wonderful people. But the Council on Aging Senior Center social worker compared to the protective service social worker, it has different connotations.
Lynn, what are some of the tips for being scammed, to protect yourself from being scammed, that is?
Don't answer your phone.
That's not
If
true.
you don't know who it is calling you, don't answer it. Check with your family, and find out if your grandkid is on vacation somewhere, or if call them, because that's one of the you got to check with your family. Don't just automatically assume that it's true.
Don't believe what they're telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
I always say take a deep breath before you act, and then think about what it is.
It's also just sometimes it's helpful to talk to somebody and just, I say all the time when I go to the Council on Aging and I tell them about a scam, and people who are in the room just shake their head. Nobody would believe that. And I say, but people do believe that, and the reason is because you're all sitting here together, so you feel braver. When you're in your own home and you're alone and someone's on the phone and you get frightened, it's hard to do the rational thing. So sometimes just hearing yourself say it out loud, for instance, we have the scam where lots and lots of people have sent gift cards off to pay supposed bills that they owe the IRS. Well, if you really think about it, we don't pay the IRS with Apple gift cards. So, it's so silly, but yet people get so flustered by the prospect of they might be arrested, they owe taxes, that they go off and do that. Where if they just said it out loud to somebody else, they would think differently about it.
Absolutely.
And
I
on
think
that-
also that the people that are at the Council on Aging are much more dialed in.
Right.
We've been, they're talking to us, we've been educating them, so they have some sort of idea of what to be looking for.
That's good.
And the IRS is not going to call you.
Right.
They always send stuff in the mail. So if they're telling you it's the IRS on the phone, or if they show up at your door saying, I'm going to arrest you if you don't pay, say, okay, take me away, because the IRS doesn't do that. They never have.
And if it's after hours, when the Council on
yeah.
Aging is open, call the police department. Let them know what's going on. We're attuned to all the scams that are going on out there. Every day there's a new one that might pop up, but we know what most of the scams are out there. If you think it's a scam or you don't know, call us, and we'll help you. And if it needs to go further, we'll do that as well. But just if you want to verify, if it's a fundraiser, I mean, certain like the Little League and all the Pop One, they all do fundraisers every year, and they're very good at letting the police know when they're doing the fundraiser. So if it sounds suspicious, it probably is. So give the police department a call. We don't mind helping out in that way.
That's good. It's a very difficult situation. Do you let the public know when a new scam is out there? How do you do that?
And well, one of the things we encourage people, as the detective said, is if they've been approached for something, even if they've been smart enough not to get involved in it, to just let the Council on Aging, let the police department know, because they are great about putting things out. We also get the local papers to put things out so that when somebody gets that call or gets that letter, they say, oh yeah, I saw that in the paper. I know this is a scam.
And in Burlington, we put in the newsletter oftentimes. And then I will, if there's something brand new, I'll talk about it on the senior news that I do twice a month, which follows the Friday night news. So if you stay tuned after the regular news and you stay tuned for me, you'll see me talk about, not every time, but often you'll see me talk about the newest scam that's popped up. And I try to talk about it in more general terms. I try not to talk so much about the very specific scam that popped up. I try to keep it so that they can use it for the next scam as well. So, what information not to give out, how to handle the phone calls, so that if it's not that specific scam, you still know, and you still have those tools to manage it.
Right. Well, that's good. Well, we're getting close to time, so I want some last comments and important information you think people should know on how to recognize someone who's being abused, or what to do if you think you see someone who is being abused. Anybody want to make a comment on that before we close?
I'll start.
Sorry, go ahead.
Start. Well, again, change in behavior. If someone has always had a pleasant attitude and all of a sudden they become very fearful, or they're changing their appearance, changing their health, change is key. Having great neighbors is very crucial. Check on your neighbors, especially if they're elderly, especially now that the cold weather is coming. Check on your neighbors, not just for the heat alone, but check on their overall well-being. If you see a change, there's a reason for it. So, if it's something that needs to be addressed, let's address it at the onset so that the person doesn't, deteriorate, or the situation doesn't get any worse.
Don't be afraid that you might get in trouble if you say
You
something.
won't, no, because it's either something or it's not. If it's not, then fine. They're healthy. Everything's good. If it's something, then Marge, the DA, the police, somebody has to intervene. So it's either something or it's not. And if it's nothing, great.
You all check out on all these suspects, people who are suspicious of a situation. Do you check them all out, or not?
Yes, we check out every call. We respond to, if we get a call for service, we respond. And I say it jokingly, but there's nothing more that a policeman likes to do is to go to a call and not have to write a report. But it's true. They'd rather go to a call and not have to write a report. But we'd rather go and have it be nothing than not go and find out a day later or a week later it was something.
But the police do not see every single case, and the DA's office does not see every
Right.
single case. Generally, between Minuteman Senior Services in Burlington and COA, we're usually able to manage most of the cases. It's the more serious ones that will go beyond the COA and Protective Services.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, this is quite a subject matter and there's so much to discuss. So I understand you all can come back next month so we can finish talking about this because it's really an important issue. Sure. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Be Prepared, and we hope that you take in all this information and hopefully not have to come across something like this because none of us want to see any of our elders being abused. So we will see you in January. And thank you and good night. This is Be Prepared.